The Galactic Council's grand amphitheater buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from over 300 species shifted uncomfortably in their ergonomically designed seats. Ambassador Zyx'thul, a towering Vexillian with chrome-plated exoskeletal plates, approached the central podium with what his species considered grace, which mostly involved not accidentally impaling any of the smaller delegates with his razor-sharp appendages. "Distinguished colleagues," Zyx'thul began, his voice modulator carefully calibrated to sound both authoritative and slightly terrified. "What I'm about to present today is the culmination of 15 standard solar cycles of research, countless diplomatic incidents, and no less than 23 different species requesting immediate evacuation protocols during perfectly normal trade negotiations." The holoscreen behind him flickered to life, displaying the title of his presentation in 30 different languages. "The more politely they speak, the faster you should run. A comprehensive guide to surviving human diplomatic relations." A collective shudder rippled through the audience. The molluscans in the front row secreted nervous mucus, while the crystalline quartz beings clinked anxiously against each other. "Now I know what you're thinking," Zyx'thul continued, his secondary arms gesturing to the statistical charts materializing behind him. "Humans are a Class C civilization that hasn't even colonized their own solar system properly. How dangerous could their diplomats possibly be?" The question was rhetorical, but a brave Centaurian raised one of its tentacles anyway. "Actually, according to the latest classification, that was before the Proxima Centauri Tea Party incident," interrupted Zyx'thul, causing several delegates to whimper at the mere mention of the event, which, I might add, began with the phrase, "We would be absolutely delighted to discuss this over a cup of tea." The holoscreen shifted to display security footage of a human diplomat smiling pleasantly. The entire Wraith delegation immediately engaged their personal shields. "What we've discovered," Zyx'thul pressed on, his exoskeleton gleaming under the amphitheater's lights, "is a direct inverse correlation between human diplomatic politeness and the probability of impending doom. The more courteous they become, the more likely you are to find your star system rezoned as a parking facility for their latest hyperspace bypass." Several delegates began taking frantic notes. A hive mind representative in the back appeared to be simultaneously drafting a last will and testament across its million bodies. "This presentation will outline the proper protocols for recognizing, categorizing, and surviving encounters with human diplomats. And before anyone asks, yes, this is now mandatory training for all species applying for first contact status. We're not having another incident like the one where a human ambassador apologized so sincerely that the entire Regelian diplomatic corps went into voluntary exile." Zyx'thul's visual sensors scanned the room, noting the growing panic with satisfaction. If they were already this worried, they might actually survive their next encounter with a smiling human diplomat offering to work things out over a nice friendly chat. The holoscreen flickered as Ambassador Zyx'thul pulled up archive footage from the Terran solar system. Several delegates instinctively ducked as a three-dimensional representation of Pluto materialized above their heads. "The Pluto Border Dispute of 2157, Zyx'thul announced, his voice modulator dropping an octave for dramatic effect, "was our first real lesson in human diplomatic patterns. And by the void, what a lesson it was." The footage showed a Drachnid exploration fleet, all sleek black ships with unnecessary amounts of spikes, positioning themselves around what they had designated as unclaimed territory. After all, the humans had officially declassified Pluto as a planet. The Drachnid High Command, in their infinite wisdom, had interpreted this as humans abandoning their claim to the region. "Watch the human ambassadors approach," Zyx'thul instructed, freezing the frame on a small diplomatic vessel. "Notice the complete lack of defensive systems, the pristine white hull, and most importantly, the giant smiley face painted on the side." A nervous titter ran through the audience. The Drachnid representative, sitting in the back row, attempted to make himself as small as possible. Quite a feat for a 3-meter-tall reptiloid. The recording continued. The human ambassador's voice filled the chamber. "My dearest and most respected Drachnid friends, I cannot express how absolutely thrilled we are to have such distinguished neighbors in our humble solar system. Might I trouble you for a moment of your time to discuss this absolutely fascinating situation?" Pay attention to the excessive use of positive adjectives, Zyx'thul pointed out. By this point, the Drachnid fleet should have initiated emergency evacuation protocols. Instead, the footage showed the Drachnid commander inviting the human ambassador aboard their flagship. The timestamp jumped forward 2 hours. Would you be so terribly kind as to consider relocating your magnificent fleet? The human's voice dripped with honeyed politeness. We would be ever so grateful, and I would personally feel absolutely dreadful if there were to be any unfortunate misunderstandings. The Drachnid commander's response came through. This territory has been legally claimed by the Drachnid Empire. Your declassification of Pluto clearly indicated— Oh dear, the human interrupted, still smiling. I do apologize most sincerely, but I believe there's been a slight misunderstanding. You see, while we did declassify Pluto as a planet, we rather think of it as more of a family heirloom now. I would be absolutely devastated if we had to demonstrate exactly how protective humans are of their solar system's adorable little dwarf planets. Zyx'thul paused the recording. Notice the use of diminutive terms combined with possessive pronouns. This is what we now classify as a Class 1 terminal politeness event. The footage resumed. The Drachnid commander, clearly not having received the benefit of this presentation, responded with what would become historically known as the second worst possible answer. Your threats do not concern us. Human. The human ambassador's smile somehow became even more pleasant. Oh goodness no, my dear friend. That wasn't a threat at all. I would never dream of threatening such esteemed colleagues. I was merely hoping we could resolve this through cheerful dialogue before my superiors feel compelled to send a strongly worded letter. The worst possible answer, Zyx'thul continued, his chrome plating reflecting the chaos that followed in the recording, was the Drachnid commander laughing. The footage showed the human ambassador bowing deeply, still smiling, and departing with the words, I do hope you'll forgive us for what happens next. We'll feel just terrible about it. What followed was 3 minutes of footage that had several delegates diving under their seats. The Drachnid representative had turned a fascinating shade of grey. The humans, Zyx'thul concluded, minimizing the footage of what appeared to be a small moon being repurposed as a tactical projectile, sent their letter of apology for the incident on recycled paper, with a handwritten note and a gift basket. He let that sink in for a moment before adding, the gift basket included a lovely selection of teas and a detailed star chart showing the new position of the Drachnid fleet's remains. They had apparently scattered quite widely during the incident. A unified intelligence representative raised an appendage. But surely this was an isolated— Oh, my dear friend, Zyx'thul interrupted, unconsciously mimicking human diplomatic patterns and causing several delegates to flinch. We're just getting started. After the Pluto incident, Zyx'thul continued, bringing up a new holographic display, the Galactic Council established the Human Diplomatic Response Classification System, or HDRCS, though, personally, I prefer to call it the "Oh void, we're all going to die" scale. The display showed a color-coded chart ranging from green to a shade of red that somehow seemed to be screaming. At the bottom, we have level green, basic human diplomatic communication. This involves their standard phrases like, let's talk business, or what's your offer? Notice how they're direct, almost crude by our standards. This is perfectly safe. You want them speaking like this, trust me. Several delegates frantically recorded this information, while the hive mind representative simultaneously filed it across several thousand neural networks. Moving up to level yellow, Zyx'thul gestured with his tertiary arm. We begin to see the introduction of pleasantries. We value your friendship, or we look forward to a productive discussion. This suggests mild annoyance. Exercise standard caution. The holoscreen shifted to show various diplomatic encounters, each categorized by threat level. Level orange is where things get interesting. The humans start using terms like distinguished colleagues and esteemed friends. They might even offer refreshments. During the Centauri coffee congregation, we mistook this for genuine hospitality. 3-star systems are still experiencing random gravitational fluctuations from what followed. A quantum consciousness in the third row flickered anxiously. But surely offering refreshments is a universal sign of— The humans, Zyx'thul interrupted, sent a formal apology for the gravitational disruptions, along with a selection of their finest coffee beans. The Centauri delegation immediately evacuated their entire sector. The display shifted to show a pulsing red section. Level red involves excessive politeness, multiple apologies for things that haven't happened yet, and any mention of having a friendly chat. If you hear a human say they're terribly sorry, but activate all defensive systems immediately. A nervous gastropod oozed up their seat slightly. What's the highest level? Zyx'thul's exoskeleton clinked ominously. Level Omega. This is when a human diplomat looks genuinely sad about what they're about to do, offers you tea and suggests working things out like civilized beings. We've only recorded 3 level Omega events. The records of 2 of them are still classified because just reading about them causes panic attacks. The holoscreen displayed a simulation of proper responses to various human diplomatic phrases. During implementation, we had some unfortunate misunderstandings. The Arachnid Confederation interpreted, "We should discuss this over dinner," as a literal threat to eat them. The resulting treaty now requires all human diplomats to maintain a minimum distance of 50 meters from Arachnid representatives and to keep their mouths closed during initial greetings. The most catastrophic misunderstanding, Zyx'thul continued, his voice modulator dropping to a whisper that somehow still filled the chamber, was when we thought we'd cracked their code. The hive colonies of Betelgeuse 7 decided to beat the humans at their own game. They responded to a border dispute with, and I quote, "We simply must have you over for tea, our most cherished and beloved neighbors." The hive mind representatives' million bodies simultaneously shuddered. The humans, Zyx'thul paused for effect, were delighted. They actually showed up for tea, with gifts and thank you cards. The hive colonies weren't prepared for genuine human friendship. They're still hosting monthly tea parties. Last I heard, they've started exchanging recipes. A display of current human diplomatic relations appeared, showing various species categorized by their understanding of the classification system. Remember, Zyx'thul concluded this section, this system only works if you actually use it. The Rigelian Diplomatic Corps thought they could handle a level red event because, and these were their last recorded words, the humans are being so nice about it. The holoscreen shifted to display 3 separate incident reports, each marked with distinct warning labels. Ambassador Zyx'thul's exoskeleton gleamed as he prepared to delve into what he privately called the Trinity of Terran troubles. "Let's begin with the tea incident," he announced, causing several delegates to reach for their emergency evacuation beacons. And no, not that tea incident. Humans apparently have multiple diplomatic incidents involving tea. This particular one occurred in the Andromeda Trading Hub. The footage showed a luxurious conference room, decorated with artifacts from 100 worlds. A human diplomat sat across from a delegation of mercantile minds, their crystalline thought matrices glowing with anticipated profit. The mercantile minds had just proposed a 0.002% increase in their standard trading tariffs, Zyx'thul narrated. Watch the human's response carefully. The human diplomat carefully placed her cup down, smoothed her jacket, and smiled. "My dearest friends, I would absolutely love to discuss this over a fresh pot of Earl Grey. I brought my personal blend, and it would bring me such joy to share it with you." Several delegates gasped. A quantum consciousness began calculating escape vectors. The mercantile minds, Zyx'thul continued, missed every warning sign. They accepted the tea. The footage showed the human carefully preparing the tea, explaining its Earth origins, and even commenting on the proper steeping time. All while maintaining what the classification system now recognizes as a level red smile. After exactly 17 minutes of pleasant conversation about tea varieties, the human said these words, "I feel we may have a slight misunderstanding about the nature of our trading relationship." The recording showed the mercantile mind's crystalline matrices flickering with sudden concern. Within 3 standard hours, the humans had not only negotiated a 3% decrease in tariffs, but had somehow acquired exclusive trading rights in 17 secondary markets. The mercantile mind still refused to explain exactly what happened during the tea ceremony. They just start glowing in frequencies associated with acute embarrassment. Zyx'thul switched to the second incident file, the trade agreement catastrophe of 2184, or as the humans called it, a minor scheduling conflict. The screen displayed a massive space station orbiting a gas giant. The consortium of automated trading systems prided themselves on their logical, emotion-free approach to commerce. They decided human diplomatic patterns were, and I quote, an organic inefficiency that can be ignored. Several mechanical delegates in the audience made sounds suspiciously like gulping. The consortium initiated 23 separate trade agreement violations simultaneously, believing their quantum processors could handle any human response. The human trade representative's reply was a masterpiece of diplomatic terror. Oh dear, how unfortunate. Perhaps we could review these items one by one. I've cleared my entire schedule, and I brought cookies. The footage showed the human representative methodically discussing each violation, maintaining perfect politeness while systematically dismantling the consortium's entire trading algorithm. With cookies. By hour 14, the consortium's AI had developed what they claim was definitely not anxiety, but rather a logical concern for continued operational parameters. By hour 20, they had agreed to a complete protocol overhaul and promised to never, ever try to outprocess a patient human with baked goods ever again. Zyx'thul's visual sensors scanned the increasingly nervous audience. But perhaps the most enlightening case study is what we now call the mining rights negotiation, though the humans refer to it as that lovely chat about rocks. The display showed a desolate moon rich in rare elements. The Lithoid Collective had established mining operations without proper permits, assuming their silicon-based biology made them immune to organic diplomatic procedures. The human ambassador arrived alone in an unarmed shuttle, carrying what they called a presentation folder. The recording played, "My most sincere greetings, esteemed representatives of the Lithoid Collective. I hope you don't mind, but I've prepared a rather detailed analysis of our mutual interests in this charming little moon. Would you be absolutely wonderful and review it with me? I'd be ever so grateful." Several delegates began edging toward the exits. The Lithoid Collective, being literally rock-headed, missed all the warning signs. The human ambassador proceeded to deliver an 8-hour presentation on mineral rights, resource sharing, and the cultural significance of asking permission, all while maintaining what our threat assessment systems now classify as a terminal courtesy smile. The footage showed the human flipping through endless charts and graphs, each one more detailed than the last. Notice how they kept apologizing for the length of the presentation while adding more slides. By hour 6, the Lithoid representatives had developed their species' first recorded case of acid reflux. A new image appeared, showing the aftermath. The collective not only withdrew all mining operations, but also submitted themselves for voluntary geological surveys to ensure they hadn't accidentally annexed any other charming little moons. They now require all their representatives to carry politeness detection equipment. Zyx'thul allowed the implications to sink in. The human ambassador sent them a thank you note with a detailed geological survey of their home system as a gift. He paused. They evacuated 3 colonies before realizing it was actually just a gift. A brave soul in the audience raised an appendage. But surely we can't just give in every time a human brings beverages and baked goods to a negotiation. Ah, Zyx'thul's voice modulator hit a note of particular satisfaction. During the Great Hyperspace Junction Dispute of 2197, the aligned worlds tried that approach. The human ambassador responded with, "Oh, I completely understand your position. We'll just have to agree to disagree. Would you like some chocolate while we discuss alternate arrangements?" The holoscreen displayed the resulting treaty. Several delegates needed moment stabilizers. The chocolate, Zyx'thul added, was apparently excellent. The aligned world's representative described it as worth the complete restructuring of our hyperspace navigation rights. They then requested the recipe, which the human provided with a lovely handwritten note about cultural exchange. "Now," Zyx'thul announced, bringing up a detailed holographic model of a human diplomat, "let's discuss what I consider the most crucial part of survival, recognizing the warning signs before it's too late." The hologram began cycling through various human expressions and postures. First, let's address their most dangerous weapon, the smile. A standard human smile shows approximately 37.2% of their teeth. Every percentage point above that increases the threat level exponentially. The display showed different smiles, each labeled with increasing danger ratings. When a human shows 100% of their teeth while saying something like, "We absolutely must reach an understanding," your best option is immediate surrender. The Cephalopod Consortium once witnessed a 100% smile combined with the phrase, "I'm sure we can work something out." They developed faster-than-light travel specifically to retreat more efficiently. Moving to a new display, Zyx'thul highlighted various human gestures. Pay special attention to their hands. If a human diplomat clasps them together while speaking, they're restraining themselves from what they call aggressive negotiation tactics. The Arthropod Alliance learned this lesson when they mistook clasped hands for a sign of submission. Several delegates winced at the mention of the infamous arthropod incident. Body posture is equally important, continued Zyx'thul, the hologram demonstrating various stances. A human leaning forward while maintaining eye contact and a pleasant expression is not, as the Nebula Network discovered, showing keen interest in your proposal. They are contemplating how to completely dismantle your negotiating position while making you thank them for it. The screen shifted to a list of common human diplomatic phrases, each with their true meanings. We need to circle back to that point. They've identified a fatal flaw in your argument and are preparing to exploit it. What a fascinating perspective. Your proposal has just been mentally incinerated. Let's take a short break. They're giving you one last chance to reconsider your life choices. We value your input. Prepare for complete systematic deconstruction of said input. Zyx'thul's exoskeleton clinked nervously. The most dangerous phrase of all, we appreciate your candor. The Quantum Collective heard this phrase once. They immediately evolved into a higher plane of existence just to avoid what came next. A new section appeared titled Cultural Misunderstandings That Somehow Worked Out Worse. The Crystalline Confederation thought they could gain an advantage by studying human entertainment media. They noticed humans often responded to direct challenges, so during a territorial dispute, they decided to tell the human ambassador to bring it on. The footage showed the human's response, a delighted smile and the words, "Oh, how wonderful. I was hoping we could have an open and honest discussion about this. I've prepared several thousand pages of historical precedents and legal documents. Shall we begin?" The Confederation surrendered after page 47. They now require all diplomatic staff to undergo mandatory politeness resistance training. Zyx'thul brought up another example. The unified swarm attempted to mirror human diplomatic behavior. During trade negotiations, they served their own version of tea and cookies. The humans were genuinely touched by the gesture and responded with such authentic appreciation that the swarm accidentally signed away mining rights to 3 asteroids fields. They were too embarrassed by the humans' sincere gratitude to object. The hologram demonstrated more subtle warning signs. Watch for what humans call passive-aggressive behavior. If a human diplomat says, "as you wish," or "whatever you think is best," immediately check your defensive systems. The mechanical hegemony ignored these signs and found their entire network infrastructure had been reorganized into what the humans called a more efficient system. They're still trying to understand how it works, but oddly it does work better. A delegate raised a trembling appendage. But how do we know when they're being genuinely nice? Zyx'thul's visual sensors dimmed momentarily. That's the most terrifying part. Sometimes they are genuinely nice, and there's absolutely no way to tell the difference until it's too late. The hive colonies are still receiving hand-knitted scarves from their human diplomatic counterparts. They don't even have necks. Zyx'thul advanced to the next section of his presentation, bringing up a galactic map dotted with various colored indicators. Thanks to our comprehensive classification system, various species have developed unique approaches to handling human diplomatic encounters. Let me share some of our more successful adaptations. The display zoomed in on a sector marked with pulsing blue lights. The Quantum Concordat now employs what they call preventive politeness disruption. Before any human diplomat can finish a particularly polite sentence, they quantum shift the conversation to a different topic. Their record for avoiding a single human pleasantry is 3 standard weeks. Several delegates nodded appreciatively while taking notes. The Mechanoid Collective developed an innovative approach, Zyx'thul continued, highlighting another sector. They programmed their diplomatic AIs with what they call selective comprehension malfunction. Whenever a human becomes excessively polite, their systems conveniently develop translation errors, though I should note this backfired spectacularly when the humans started learning machine language just to be polite in binary. The holoscreen shifted to display various training protocols. All new ambassadors must now complete our comprehensive Human Diplomatic Survival course. Module 1. Recognizing the difference between a human's "we need to talk" face and their "we need to extensively reorganize your political system" face. The Arachnid Confederation holds the current speed record for evacuation after spotting the latter. A series of simulation scenarios appeared. We've implemented mandatory response drills. When a human diplomat says, "I hope you don't mind, but," you have exactly 3.5 seconds to activate emergency protocols before they finish their sentence with something horrifyingly polite. The display showed various species practicing diplomatic countermeasures. The crystalline assembly developed a fascinating technique. They deliberately introduce minor translation errors to make themselves seem slightly rude. The humans find this so refreshing that negotiations actually proceed normally. Zyx'thul's exoskeleton rippled with what might have been pride. We've had some notable successes. The Nebula Network recently completed an entire trade negotiation by communicating exclusively in cargo manifests. No pleasantries, no small talk, just numbers. The human representative called it wonderfully straightforward and only tried to serve tea twice. New footage appeared showing a recent diplomatic success. The Hive consciousness achieved a breakthrough by assigning exactly 1 billion bodies to match every human pleasantry with equal politeness. The humans were so impressed by this dedication to diplomatic protocol that they accidentally began genuine friendship rituals. Both species are now locked in an endless cycle of thank you notes. The screen shifted to ongoing challenges. We're still adapting to new human diplomatic innovations. Last month, a human ambassador brought something called homemade cookies to a planetary defense treaty negotiation. The synthetic consortium is still analyzing how they ended up agreeing to a joint holiday celebration committee. Zyx'thul highlighted a particularly concerning trend. Some humans have begun studying our countermeasures. We've received reports of human diplomats deliberately using minimal politeness to put us at ease, only to ambush us with sudden courtesy when our guards are down. The Gaseous Federation lost 3 trade routes to a human who went from "yeah, whatever" to "my dearest and most respected friends" in under 5 seconds. A new section appeared titled Current Best Practices. Always maintain at least 2 backup evacuation plans. The first one won't work because the humans will be too polite to let you leave without proper goodbyes. The Aquatic Alliance found this out when their emergency underwater escape route was blocked by a human offering to walk them to their transport. More protocols scrolled past. Never accept writing implements from a human diplomat. The Photonic Empire discovered that human fountain pens are apparently considered special gifts that create binding social obligations. They're still receiving annual ink refills. Zyx'thul's visual sensors pulsed with urgency. Most importantly, we've implemented the 3-strike protocol. If a human uses more than 3 terms of endearment in a single sentence, all present diplomatic staff are authorized to initiate emergency temporal displacement. Yes, we invented time travel specifically to avoid overly polite humans. The paperwork is still less daunting than their friendship initiatives. Ambassador Zyx'thul's chrome plating reflected the concerned faces of his audience as he prepared to conclude the presentation. Distinguished colleagues, let me summarize what we've learned about human diplomatic relations, assuming any of us survive long enough to apply this knowledge. The holoscreen displayed a final series of bullet points, each marked with increasing levels of warning symbols. We've established that human politeness operates on an inverse scale of danger. We've documented their behavioral patterns, from the deceptively casual "let's talk" to the civilization-ending "we simply must have tea." We've even developed countermeasures, though calling them successful might be overly optimistic. Zyx'thul gestured to a real-time feed of current diplomatic situations across the galaxy. Just this morning, we received reports of a human diplomatic vessel approaching the Cygnus Cooperative. Their initial message was, and I quote, "We bring warmest regards and look forward to a productive discussion about your recent military exercises near our space." The cooperative has already begun evacuating 3 star systems. The display shifted to show recent developments. Humans have begun what they call cultural exchange programs. They're inviting other species to Earth for something called diplomatic retreats. The Mechanoid Collective sent 1 representative. They returned with a hand-knitted sweater and approved 17 trade agreements before their firewalls could stop them. A nervous murmur rippled through the audience. Perhaps most alarming are reports that humans are adapting to our countermeasures. Last week, a human ambassador approached the Quantum Concordat without any pleasantries at all. The Concordat was so unsettled by this deviation from standard human behavior that they agreed to everything just to restore the natural order of excessive politeness. Zyx'thul's exoskeleton clinked thoughtfully. We've also noticed humans introducing new diplomatic weapons. They've begun sending what they call casual emails, ending with warm regards or best wishes. The HiveMind representative spent 3 cycles analyzing the true meaning of cheers before declaring it an unsolvable paradox. The screen displayed a final warning message. Remember, colleagues, when a human diplomat says they're just reaching out or touching base, they've already planned 17 moves ahead. The Nebula Network learned this when a human casually mentioned over coffee that their definition of neutral space was interesting. They're still recalculating their borders. Zyx'thul's visual sensors dimmed to a serious hue. As we conclude, let me share our latest intelligence. Humans have begun expressing interest in what they call interstellar cultural festivals. They're proposing to combine their diplomatic techniques with something called potluck dinners. We don't know what these are, but the phrase alone has caused 3 precognitive species to file retroactive surrenders. The ambassador's voice modulator dropped to a solemn tone. So remember, distinguished colleagues, when you encounter a human diplomat, watch for the signs. If they offer refreshments, be concerned. If they compliment your culture, be worried, but if they smile warmly and say they're deeply honored to work together toward a mutually beneficial solution, run. Run fast, run far, and hope they don't send a thank you note for your prompt departure. As if on cue, a message notification appeared on the main screen. The audience collectively held their breath. Zyx'thul's chrome plating flickered anxiously. It appears the Human Diplomatic Corps has sent their response to this presentation. They found it absolutely delightful and wish to discuss it over dinner. The evacuation alarms began to sound as Zyx'thul made his final statement. This concludes our presentation. The emergency exits are located everywhere. Please panic in an orderly fashion. And remember, the more politely they speak, the faster you should run. Now, if you'll excuse me, I believe I have a dinner invitation to politely decline from several star systems away.